that's not like manly. It's not being like really adult about something. That's just like being at all decent at your job, because it's his job, right? Like, it is Lino's job to be a dance leader. He's just like not totally sucking at his job. That's how you develop psychological safety on a team. If you don't act that way, if you're more authoritarian, if you're more stubborn, if you're more whatever, you worsen psychological safety on your team, and your team starts to suck more. So, like, I love you, Felix, and I'm very concerned about the fact that you think that this is, like, really cool leadership behavior, because, like, this is basic leadership behavior. This is just, like, fundamental leadership behavior. I'm here now, and I come bearing, caffeine. I come bearing so much tea. And I come bearing the absolutely unhinged energy of someone who has not gotten enough sleep in about 3 weeks. My throat is functional though, so that's exciting. We've got a lot to do today, and by we, I mean me. I've got a lot to do today. So, we are doing Minlicks. Yes, we're doing Minlicks. Okay, yes, anyway, if somehow you don't know, my name is Lullaby, I'm a therapist. I do 2KidsRoom's reactions. God, I'm so bad at introductions. I just need to record a singular introduction that doesn't suck. It will suck. It will suck, but, like, doesn't suck as much, and then just, like, move on from there. And just be done with this bullshit. Okay, done. All right. So I, per usual, if you have thoughts and you want to throw them into the chat, please do. I love responding to thoughts as things are happening. I think that it is a great deal of fun and gives me a little bit of extra, stuff to work with about, like, what people are interested in, what people want to know more about, etc., and so forth. Now, I suspect, what do I know about Minlicks? I know they do something with Peppero. Based on my experience with 2KidsRoom thus far, I don't really suspect this will be a really super deep and insightful reaction from me. I'm not optimistic that these two, like, really get into a whole bunch of nitty-gritty that I want to get into, but we'll see. I am still committed to trying to build a consistent mental model of Lee Know. I'm still very unconvinced about my ability to do so, considering after this I've got, like, one 2KidsRoom left of him, and I'm still pretty unconvinced about that, but we will find out if I can do that or not.
야, 저 이게 뭐야? 경보가 보고 싶어?
뭐야, 카톡 뭐야? 귀엽네. 그런 시절이 있었네.
이때 탐이 갔을 텐데 명복이랑 둘이 갔던 건 또 처음이라서 기억에 남네요.
이건 기억난다. 와, 이거 진짜 좋은 기억이었다. 이건 청담에서 우리 비행기 타기 전에 헤매를 받고 있었는데 근처에서 우리 카페에 가서 뭐 마시자, 뭐 먹자 해서 나가서 뭐 먹으면서 해가 뜨고 있는데 바깥에서 아침밥을 먹으면서 이런 모습이 진짜 기억이 나.
이거 재밌었어요. 재밌게 탔습니다. 간만에 느껴보는 스릴. 용복이와 함께.
리누 형 은근 많이 놀아주네.
Yeah, we know it's because you're his cat.
있는 것 같아. 같이 몰래만 둘이만 있으면 은근 많이 놀아주고 행동 표현이 너무 깊어.
용복이는 아주 맑은 에너지로 저희의 영혼을 정화시켜주는 그런 친구입니다.
They're both being very consistent about what other people have said about both of them, which isn't, I don't know, much for me to note about, but it is a thing. I do like to see when there is consistency. I'm thinking about when Changbin said that Felix was the sanitation truck or something. And everybody agrees that Lee Know is like very warm, especially in private. So
맛있네.
why do they always use the word pray in reference to Lee Know? Like, I feel like I don't know that they consistently use the word pray for anybody else, but they do for Lee Know.
바로 이거만 계속 먹고 있었지. 나도 아까 먹었어. 맛있지 이거.
그러니까
그러니까.
이건 딱복, 이건 용복.
야, 향을 이렇게 터진다.
그래서 그런 양양 나차래. 이거 고양이 같다고 느낀 적 없어.
그러니까 형은 고양이는 약간 막 강아지처럼 활발하지 않잖아. 근데 뒤에서 멀리 약간 지켜보는 느낌이 있어. 어느 순간 좀 고양이 같지 않아 싶어. 형은?
너 고양이 같다고 느낄 때?
많이 없대.
근데 사실 행동이 고양이 같다고 느낀 적은 없는 것 같은데 차라리 행동은 개지. 강아지.
개 같다는 거야?
아니, 사람 좋아.
I do think that's kind of true. I mean, like, Felix might be just a very friendly cat. There are very friendly cats, but he has some tendencies of both. I'm thinking about when he recently licked his palm to start petting Han's hair. And like, that's not a very dog behavior. That was pretty cat-like.
좋아하고
참 좋아하고.
뭐랄까 이게 부비적 거리는 거 좋아하고 만지는 거 좋아하고
맞아.
약간 성격은 뭔가 강아지 같은데 이제 생긴 게 외모가 이제 고양이상이니까 이제 그렇게
그런 것 같아. 약간 개냥이라고 해야 되나? 그냥 개냥은 많진 않지. 주변에.
아니야 우리 집 애들도 다 개냥이야.
아니 진짜?
응.
순이, 둥이, 도리 중에 나 좀 닮은 그 친구 있나?
도리.
도리?
응. 도리도 되게 차가워 보이는데 생긴 거는 근데 또 사람들한테 와서 되게 비비고 다니거든 걔가.
아 그렇게. 아직도 김포에 있나?
응.
계속 어머님이랑 같이.
맞아.
어머님 지금 3마리 지금 계속.
응. 그러니까 나 하나 키우는 것보다 고양이 3마리 키우는 게 엄마도 훨씬 편할 거야.
Yeah, this is big small talk energy, which is like it's nice to learn facts, I suppose, about like a current situation. It is funny when it feels like the fandom knows more about a situation than one of the boys do. But like, I guess it's nice to have certain facts confirmed. But yeah, I can definitely tell that the energy here is much more of like, we're gonna have a casual conversation rather than like we're gonna have a comfortable conversation rather than we're going to have an intimate conversation. And like maybe that changes. But that definitely seems to be the vibe. And if that continues to be the vibe, it'll be nice because that means this reaction will be fast. It won't be nice for building my mental model of Lee Know, though.
고양이 같아요 그대로. 보면 진짜 고양이 같고 멀리서 챙겨봐주고 좀 찐드레 느낌도 있으면서 장난 조금씩 쳐주고 귀엽고 나름 좀 사랑스러운 것 같아요.
요생 2년차 고양이. 딱 그때가 장난 엄청 많이 치고 그럴 시기여서 사람 좋아하는
Did he just say that as a fact? Is this a saying I don't know, or did he just factually like say outright without blinking that a cat's second life is when they play around a lot? Like, am I missing something in translation or in cultural context? Or is he doing cat astrology for us? Like, what just happened? I feel like that went by way too fast, and I need way more information.
양이 같은 느낌이어서 요즘 장난 많이 치잖아. 근데
그치. 우리 투어 때인가?
어.
투어 때부터 장난을 엄청 많이
그
치지.
네가 갑자기 내 엉덩이를 막 만지기 시작했어.
아니 근데 그 전에도 형도 내 엉덩이를 계속 만졌어.
나는 원래 사람들 엉덩이 많이 만지고 다녔어.
그치. 그러니까. 아니 근데 투어하면서 무대에서는 재밌잖아. 난
그치.
솔직히 그냥 춤도 추고 뭐 노래 부르고 다 재밌는데 더 재밌게 하고 싶은 거지.
그치. 약간 새로운 이벤트 같이.
맞아. 나는 궁금한 게 있어. 형은 장난치는 거는
Is this our argument for why you kept squeezing Felix's tits? Is that the the butt hunting is too rote at this point? It's too done. You've overplayed your hand on it, and now you gotta squeeze something else. But like that's Hyunjin's thing. There's an ad. My community's back.
그 선이 있나?
뭔 선?
약간 나는 형이랑 장난친 이후로
Do you have a
형은 이렇게 형이랑 장난치면 화를
Is there anything he won't grab? I think that's my question about does he have a limit? What's his limit on body parts he'll grab on stage? That's my curiosity. Is that my therapeutic curiosity? Probably not. But from a shit posting perspective, that's my curiosity.
날 수 있을까 형이?
화날 때까지 해봐 한번.
이런 생각이 그래서 두려운 거지. 나 형이랑 갑자기 이렇게 장난치게 되는데.
This is a little bit interesting. I mean, again, it's just reinforcing, and I'm trying to build a mental model of Lee Know, so this is good reinforcement. What was the last... What did I do on Friday? I did a Lee Know one on Friday. And I'm totally blanking on which one it was. One of them. Anyway, they were talking about how he doesn't really get mad, like he doesn't really hold grudges. They were talking about grudges, but they were talking a lot about... maybe it was Changmin. It was Changmin and Lee Know, and they were talking about how he really doesn't get very angry or like really deal a lot with frustration. And so I think it's sort of interesting that Felix is asking this specific question of like, is there a limit at which you'll get mad or frustrated or whatever, the best translation of whatever word they're using is. The Bip Bop Boo episode? Sorry, I just looked at chat. What is Tumin somehow a Bippity Boppity Boo episode? Is there a Cinderella reference I'm missing? I don't know what that means. Okay, I'm gonna continue. So it's interesting that Felix is asking specifically, like, is there a limit at which you will get upset or like get annoyed? And Lee Know's sort of reaction being like, oh, test it. I think probably makes sense for somebody who like that's not really the emotional quality that they'd experience or that they do experience very often. Yeah, and I'm sort of curious how much insight like Felix has into Lee Know's like states of anger. Oh, the show with I did kind of turn that on the other day, and then I wondered if I want to react to it instead. So yeah, that's on my to watch list to see if it helps me out.
어디까지 할 수 있나? 약간 이런 생각인 거지. 막 어디까지 약간 화가 나게 약간 선까지 어떻게 할 수 있을까 이런 생각이 아니라 정말
내
잘못
선이
건드릴까봐
잘못
내가
건드릴까봐.
건드릴까봐 좀 이거 잘 생각해봐야겠다.
근데 나는 선이 넘으면 딱 확실히 말해. 야, 근데 이건 좀 아닌 것 같다. 라고 하면 그럼 그런 거고 뭐. 우리 애들 성향이 다 그러니까 그냥 딱 선 지키면서 딱 하니까. 자, 이거라도 쓰고 있어 영모가.
이거 뭐야?
몰라 여기 있었어.
여기 있었어? 귀엽네.
Yeah, like that's so reasonable. Like that's just like the reasonable level-headed response of yeah, if you cross the line, I'll just tell you crossed the line. And a lot of people really struggle with asserting those kinds of boundaries, or rather requests. That starts at a request, which is the request is, hey, I wasn't comfortable with that. Can you not do that? Usually that doesn't have to become a boundary if you have like trust on a team. Boundaries are your reaction if something continues to happen. So the initial, the sort of like, hey, I'm uncomfortable with that, that's not a boundary, that's a request. And then if somebody refuses that request, then you create a boundary that's like, okay, well then I'm going to change the way I engage with you in some way. And if it keeps happening, I will continue to keep changing the way I engage with you. But yeah, like that's just the level-headed response. And I kind of like the way that conversation went. I think I've mentioned this before. Lee Know seems to be a pretty good coach in like casual conversation. Like the way he models behavior and the way he models by sort of like how he engages with conversation to describe what his behavior would be in order to model what he thinks appropriate behavior would be to other people. Like he's pretty smooth at integrating that. Also, this is hilarious that he knows Felix well enough that he can just be like, hey, put this on. And Felix is like, yeah, sure. It appears. Where did it appear? Was it just sitting? Like underneath.
자,
Yeah, just sitting on the coffee table.
이거 뭐야?
몰라 여기 있었어.
여기 있었어? 귀엽네.
그래 이거 솔직히 좀 잘 안 맞는다 나랑.
This is another thing, though, that some of this is probably... I do remember now that a lot of people were sort of commenting on Felix just doing what he's told. That could be it. It could be a personality thing. I also want to point out that it could be an observer bias thing. So building an understanding of Felix based on this behavior, I'd be a little bit cautious of, because this is the type of behavior that is very common for when you are on camera and attempting to create interest in something. Like I said a few reactions ago, at some point, I think it was a sort of casual comment, but one very common way in like reality television or variety shows, things like that, of creating a lot of content for editors to be able to go through to create high quality content is by basically saying whatever's on your mind. You basically, something comes up on your mind, you say it out loud. So in this case, we're sort of, that's like a personal yes and. This is like a interpersonal yes and, right? Lee Know proposed something and Felix decided to yes and it, which is good television, right? He could have yes anded it in a different way, right? Or he obviously could have been like, no. He absolutely could have done that, but you know, there is definitely something to like they know that they're on camera and they're creating content, right? This is still work for them. So I would not qualify this willingness to do something silly as necessarily a statement of personality.
안 맞는다? 근데 나 지금까지는 안 맞는 부분이 없었는데. 나는 형한테 맞춰가.
Of course you fucking are. Of course you fucking are.
시킨 대로 하는 게 더 편해.
그치.
마음 편해. 나는 그냥 오케이 하고. 근데 형도 은근 우리 팀에서 많이 따라가. 많이 맞춰.
Okay, unlike what sometimes happens when I say something and I'm immediately proven right. In this case, I said something and am immediately proven wrong, which is fine. So, you know, this is a personality trait that happens to also make good television. This is something that also tracks with some of Felix's other behaviors around, like, the Felix see, Felix do. Some of his stuff, I really should have made that embraceautism.com banner. I really should have. The Felix has this tendency to alter and adjust personality and like small types of personality traits for the people he's around, and for the context he's in. And, I think some of the ways that you notice this best is that he tends to be when there's a lot of people, when there's a lot of context and he's not interacting with somebody like one-on-one or like in a small group within that lots of people, he tends to be a little bit more of that. I think even earlier today on Threads, I mentioned his terminal resting bitch face, which he absolutely has. But he'll sort of focus his energy on a couple of people and adjust the way that he's sort of functioning in the group based on who he's directing that energy with, who he's interacting with. And otherwise, he's a little bit more like... He has a much lessened affect for those things. At least that is what I have noticed in content, is that a lot of times when people are talking about like group content with feeling like Felix is like not really present or super tired or things like that, what I've noticed there is that very often he is not focusing his energy on a couple of people. And then once he starts engaging with someone, his energy will kind of come up. And I think that's a really common thing for people who tend towards adjusting to the people they are with in order to better understand the dynamics and role that they are currently in. Some people feel much more comfortable fulfilling a role than they do fulfilling a role for themselves, like fulfilling a role for other people versus fulfilling a role for themselves. I don't really know how to, I'm struggling to explain it. I'm realizing this is like a very, because it's not quite sense of self, right? That's not really what I'm talking about. It's sort of the, if he were diagnosed autistic, right? Like if he were autistic and I knew that and I could say that, I would be talking about camouflaging, and being a high camouflaging autistic. We don't necessarily have similar terminology for that for other, camouflaging was a terminology made by the autistic community, largely for the autistic community. And there's not really a good term for that for other types of people in other types of situations, but it's the equivalent term for whatever that would be, right? Is I'm trying to blend into my surroundings rather than I am trying to be what my like fundamental nature is within my surroundings. And if I'm not 100% certain which part of my surroundings I'm trying to blend into, it might become a little muddied, right? I'm not really certain which part to blend into. There's too many different things going on in my environment. And so that camouflaging sort of like starts to break down a little bit. So this like super duper tracks with what I've seen Felix say and do in other scenarios. And the other thing that part of that could be as well, beyond, you know, whatever, whether it's neurodevelopmental stuff, whether it's pathologies, whether it's just personality traits, it could also be growing up being filmed and the expectations of what it is to be on camera, and maybe having grown up a little too young to fully like incorporate that, and getting so used to it, getting so used to being on camera at most times. Because remember, there's also cameras like in the training rooms. There's also cameras, like there's cameras even far beyond what we actually watch. So you are very used to being surveilled, and potentially so used to it that it becomes a personality trait to act as though you are always being surveilled. So there's, which is not like a pathology in and of itself, but I would say that if that is what somebody is experiencing, there is probably a level of anxiety, like at the minimum, whether it's anxiety or even further than anxiety, potentially obsession or potentially paranoia or potentially like any level of further than anxiety that's underneath that. Not always, but it would be very likely if that's the level at which one feels surveilled, that it's now part of their like how they just move throughout the world.
난 하면 해, 하면 이렇게 하면
맞아.
어.
그게 좋은 것 같아.
그게 마음 편해, 근데. 내가 생각하기
왜
싫거든.
이렇게 경험 많은 것처럼 말해?
아니, 내가 생각하기 싫거든.
그치.
사실 진짜 반반이거든. 거의 뭐 49대 51 정도 이렇게. 그러니까 뭔가 딱 결정하기가 애매한 거야.
애매하지. 근데 그게 멋인 것 같아. 형으로서 그게.
Sorry, I was thinking too hard and I didn't quite like figure out what they're saying.
그게
If I do it, I
좋은
do
것 같아.
it.
그게 마음 편해, 근데. 내가 생각하기
왜
싫거든.
이렇게 경험 많은
Because I don't. Oh, okay.
것처럼 말해?
아니, 내가 생각하기 싫거든.
그치.
사실 진짜 반반이거든. 거의 뭐 49대 51 정도 이렇게. 그러니까 뭐.
Okay, so what I'm interpreting from this, one of these days, I'm just going to start. I legitimately, no fucking joke, might end up going back through all of these and just slowly doing backwards compatibility translations to figure out what the fuck they're actually saying. I've been deeply unimpressed with our subtitle translations for these 2KidsRooms. My understanding of what they're saying is that Lee Know is partially a if I want to do it, I do it person because he doesn't want to think about what he's doing, which is very funny. But probably a little, it sounds like what he's saying is that like sometimes I don't want to care and sometimes I really do care. And that's actually a pretty healthy mindset. If that is what he's saying, is that it's like 50-50. Sometimes I want to care, sometimes I don't want to care. It is useful for us as people to be willing to not care about everything and also be willing to care about some things. That's a really important part of functioning as an adult. And a lot of folks aren't good at that, right? They feel like they have to either care about everything or they get overwhelmed by caring about everything and sort of give up on caring about anything. So a lot of people really struggle with prioritizing what they care about and how much they care about it, prioritizing what decisions they're okay with just like happening and what decisions they want to have control over. There's a lot of control, like over and under control issues in that. So if I am correct about what they are saying here, once again, that sounds just like a very healthy, stable mindset of Lee Know. I may not be correct about what they're saying here.
딱 결정하기가 애매한 거야.
애매하지. 근데 그게 멋인 것 같아. 형으로서 그게 딱 그냥 멋있게 그냥 쿨하게 넘어갈 때. 그건 진짜 좋은 거지. 안무 연습할 때 뭐 동선 확인할 때나 아니면 팀 의견도 내고 아 형이답다 약간 좀 그런 순간은 좀 이제 다른 애들 의견도 들어보고 막 고집도 있진 않고 그냥 아 오케이 그냥 일단 너희들이 의견 원하는 대로 하면 하지 이런 쿨한 마인드 있어서 좀 남자 같아.
Okay. I'm gonna say that I recognize that there is a cultural mismatch here in my immediate knee-jerk reaction to this. And it's not just like Korean versus American culture. It is a little bit also like, as someone who has done both a lot of leadership coaching and a lot of parent coaching, like the cultural mismatch is in a lot of people and a lot of different cultures in a lot of places, like a lot of microcultures, a lot of regional cultures, right? That is a normal leadership behavior. That has nothing to do with like being mature. In fact, I find that leaders who are super stubborn about things like that are usually not very mature at all, right? They're sort of the inverse. They're fairly immature. I don't really like the idea of maturity and immaturity. I don't find it valuable. I don't find it useful. But like very often leaders who are like overly stubborn and not willing to listen to their team about like things that impact their team do not have phenomenal emotional intelligence, I suppose. They don't have like phenomenal capacity to manage their own emotions. They tend to be over-controlled, or sometimes under-controlled and like looking for control. Like there tend to be a lot of issues there. It is normal, good leadership. It's normal, decent leadership behavior to like when your team says that something would be good or interesting or valuable to explore, that you like listen to them, and if you don't have strong opinions about it, you let them do it. That's not like manly. It's not being like really adult about something. That's just like being at all decent at your job, because it's his job, right? Like it is Lee Know's job to be a dance leader. He's just like not totally sucking at his job. That's how you develop psychological safety on a team. If you don't act that way, if you're more authoritarian, if you're more stubborn, if you're more whatever, you worsen psychological safety on your team, and your team starts to suck more. So, like, I love you, Felix, and I'm very concerned about the fact that you think that this is, like, really cool leadership behavior, because, like, this is basic leadership behavior. This is just, like, fundamental leadership behavior. I have a lot of opinions. But luckily, the nice thing about the ad breaks is that it does make me have to stop my ranting. Because I could. I'm holding back. I'm holding back so much. There's an ad coming up in 20 seconds. I mean, I guess I could just continue to rant about this during the ad break. since I have to rant about something. I mean, I don't have to rant. I could just like be a normal person and not have lots of opinions about being a semi-decent, competent leader. It's been a long time since I had to be patient with my leadership coaching, right? Like, I'm not in leadership coaching anymore. Obviously, I'm a therapist. I do that full time. When I was doing more leadership and team and management coaching, and that was my full-time job. Well, mostly my full-time job was complicated. I did a lot of things with my full-time job. But when that was my job, I like learned to have a lot of grace and patience for rich tech people who had a lot of opinions about how to run a team, and like a lot of breathing and a lot of like, I understand that like what you're used to is functioning in this way. And, you know, I think it's valuable to sort of see the psychology and what the research shows. And like, here's the quantitative data of why qualitative data is useful. And have you considered reading the qualitative data? We have qualitative data that explains the... But I haven't had to do that in a while, which means that my patience for it is like in hell. No.
그러면 나한테 서운했던 적 있어?
서운한 점은
I also need to go back through and see if there are any episodes where Felix does not call his member Namja. I just love that this is like his current vocal stim. That's what I'm picking up from it.
있나?
나
있어? 언제?
완전 최근도 아니고 1년, 2년 됐을까? 뭐 어쨌든 간 그때 내가 밤에 전화를 했어. 간만에 용복이 보고 싶다 그러는 거야. 그 자리에 있던 애들이. 그래서 그럼 전화 걸어볼게 하고 딱 전화를 걸었는데 그때 너가 전화를 안 받았어.
그때는 난 전화를 왜 못 받았지? 그때
막 게임하고 있어. 그리고 나중에
게임?
답장이 왔을 거야. 서운한
그
건 아닌데
아쉬웠다.
그냥 조금 속상했다.
좀 속상했다. 아니 나는 그때도 아마 그랬을 거야. 무조건 나는 게임.
I wonder, okay, was there a cut there?
나
있어? 뭐 언제?
There
나?
나
있어?
I wonder if Felix was badgering him. I wonder if there was something taken out wherein Felix was sort of like really wanted to know the answer, and Lee Know kept being like, probably at some point, but like, I don't know. And like Felix was like, oh, well then when? Or something like that. Because this is such a first you get Lee Know's like, so there's this internal, and as I mentioned in another episode, these internal things, either these are like the editor's curiosities, but like they're pitched as though they're the members' curiosities. So either the members are like involved with writing these, or they're like meant to tell us a story that like may or may not be what's actually happening. I don't know. But like that inference.
완전 최근도 아니고 1년, 2년
and then how ludicrously silly this and like vaguely irrelevant the story is just makes me wonder if this was just something where Lee Know was just like, fine, I'll think of some way that at some point I was in some way upset at you, since you clearly like need me to answer that question or something. That's just a curiosity I have. I noticed the cut, and it's such a ludicrous conversation that it feels like there's something that happened even if it was pretty quick in that cut.
뭐 어쨌든간 그때 내가 밤에 전화를 했어. 간만에 용복이 보고 싶다 그러는 거야. 그 자리에 있던 애들이. 그래서 아 그러면 전화 걸어볼게 하고 딱 전화를 걸었는데 그때 너가 전화를 안 받았어.
아 그때는 난 전화를 왜 못 받았지? 그때
막 게임하고 있어. 아 그리고 나중에
게임.
답장이 왔어.
And I wonder if that's part of as well why like if Lee Know is a little bit hesitant to like give an answer is like Felix doing the like, oh, why wasn't I able to pick up? Like this hyper analyzation of what did I do wrong and why did I do it wrong? And if that's something that he consistently does, which I could totally see Felix being somebody who consistently does, I could see an older member being like, any issues I had with you, I've already resolved with you. I don't want to bring them up again because you're just gonna get anxious about it, and I don't want that. So, like, I could see that being a thing. Guesswork, right? But educated guesswork.
있을 거야. 서운한
그
건 아닌데
아쉬웠다.
그냥 조금 속상했다.
아, 속상했다. 아니 나는 그때도 아마 그랬을 거야. 무조건 나는 게임할 때는 집중을 나 멀티가 안 돼.
아 맞아. 게임할 때 집중해야지.
그래서-
집중 안 하면 브론즈에 계속 머물러 있을 거 아니야.
그렇지. 아무래도.
그 끈기. 진짜 제가 브론즈로 계속 그렇게 있었으면은 저는 분명 그 게임을 접었을 거예요. 근데 그렇게 또 노력해서 플랫까지 찍었잖아요. 그런 거는 진짜 본받아야 돼요.
근데 최근에도 전화 왔었잖아. 이거 웃긴 게 형 최근에 나한테도 전화 걸었어.
언제 있었지? 아!
올해 이거 활동 중 아니면
This year. What a thing to remember. A phone call and you know what time it happened this year? Sometime in the last 6 months.
이후인지 또 전화 왔었어. 근데 나 거의 끝나는 쯤에 딱 형이 전화 온 거야.
아 그래?
진짜 딱 받고 싶은데
내가 그때 왜 전화했지 그거는?
모르겠어. 왜 전화? 그래서 내가 카톡은 남겼어. 그래서
그래?
형 뭐 왜 했는데
안 일십했지 내가.
그래 일십을 했더라. 일십을 했는데 아 그래? 아 알았어 뭐. 네.
그래도 내가 너 그 나 영화 보러 갔다가 공차 있길래 너
맞아.
사진 찍어서 내가 보내줬잖아.
맞아. 그때는 근데 왜 찍어서 보냈어?
아니 그냥
그냥 웃겨서?
친구들하고
얘가
영화 보러 갔는데 반가운 거야 있길래.
어.
그래서 애들이 막 야 저기 용복이다 그러길래 어디야 하고 딱 봤는데 이러고 있더라고. 그래가지고 온 김에 사진이나 찍어볼까 하고서.
게임하느라 페이스콜 못 받.
This is such an asinine story. Like, or not asinine, just like inane. Like, this is such a. It's so mundane. This is such a mundane part of being alive that we're getting explained to us in so this is TMI, right? They always say like TMI about silly things, and usually when we think about TMI we think about something that like you legitimately don't want to know, but this is like legitimately like I'm getting too much information about this phone call. Like I don't need the intimate details of this missed phone call that you followed up with a text message. This is so much information about this, like, very, just a thing that happens in life.
왜 전화했어? 형 와이 했는데 그때 이제 형이 F1 보러 영화 보러 가면서 공차에 있는 사진이랑 같이 찍어주고 그래서 좀 감동받았어요.
아 우리 최근에 냉부에 나갔다 왔잖아.
맞아. 어땠어?
내가 다음날 구찌 그 쇼가 그 있었잖아. 쇼는 아니고 그
쇼가
행사
있었지.
있었잖아. 행사 있어. 아 이거 메모 관리해야 된다고. 안 먹을 거라 오늘 가서 죽어도 안 먹을 거다. 딱 했는데 음식 냄새가 미친 거야. 처음에 일본 이제 최현석 셰프님하고 샘킴 셰프님 그렇게 해서 파스타 냄새가 미친 거야.
근데 솔직히 말해서 최현석 셰프님이 더 맛있었지.
아니, 나는 자극적인 거는 최현석 셰프님이었고 진짜 그냥 그 파스타의
다양하게
맛을
약간.
느끼려면은 샘킴 셰프님이었던 것 같아. 치킨 먹을래, 백숙 먹을래 이런 느낌처럼 약간 딱 그런 느낌이었어.
그런 느낌이긴 했어. 나 잘 먹던데?
나 미쳤어. 그냥 입 터져가지고 그날부터 계속 먹고 있는 거 아니야 지금까지.
깜짝 놀랐어. 아니 무슨 형이 먹고 있는데 내일 쇼 있는 거 아니었어? 뭐야 이 형이.
야 나 그거 다 끝나고 새벽까지
나
런닝했다니까.
깜짝 놀랐다니까? 우리 다 먹었어. 심지어 나보다 더 많이 먹었어 형.
그러니까 그때 내가 입 터져가지고 지금 아직까지 터져가지고 지금.
I'm not gonna get into it. I'm not gonna get into it. I'm not gonna get into it. Because I get into it every time. I always get into it and I always have the same shit to say. I always have the same shit to say. whatever the fuck I said about Changbin and Lino's conversation on Friday, just insert that here. I don't.
아 근데 귀여웠어. 되게 귀엽고 이렇게 해서 러닝을 한다. 오케이. 그런
This is literally, it's like literally diagnostic criteria. The disordered eating stuff really upsets me. It really upsets me. We know it really upsets me. It's on new that it really upsets me. Just still really upsets me. Especially because it's always framed as like this cute, funny story, and it's not. This is not a cute, funny story. It's just, it's really not. It's kind of horrifying. Like if you know anything about these cycles, it's just kind of horrifying. It's not like, oh, how adorable and precious and like hardworking. Like, it's even more horrifying that it is being framed as this like cutesy thing. Like that is part of the thing that horrifies me so much. That is so like gets my hackles up about this so fucking much, is that it's just like framed as just like fun, funny, cute, whatever it's being framed as. I don't even know what emotion I'm like meant to be being told to be feeling here, but I'm not.
딱 선을 지키니까.
나 그때 신기로
몇 킬로 뛰었는데?
아니 그 3km 그냥 바짝 뛰었는데
아.
3km 해서 14분 나왔어.
오, 되게 빠르다.
그냥 빨리 뛰고 빨리 가서 자야지 이 마인드로 뛰어가지고.
형 원래 평소에 10km 뛰나?
10km 뛸 때는 거의 6분대로 뛰고 6분 7분 페이스로 뛰고
10km에 몇 분?
쉐이스를 6분대로 가져와.
6분 때리고.
6분 7분.
아.
10km를 6분 안에 뛰면 그거는 난 러닝을 시작하게 된 게 그거였어.
뭐?
옛날에 우리 성내동 살 때 나 그때 러닝 엄청 다녔잖아.
맞아.
그때는 체력이 좋았는데 지금은 좀 체력이 많이 떨어진 것 같은 느낌이 든 거야. 그래가지고 아 이제 또 나 다시 체력 관리를 좀 해야겠다 하고서 3km를 처음에 한번 뛰어봤는데 미칠 것 같은 거야. 너무
그치.
힘들고.
그렇지.
그래서
막 폐가 막 찢어질 것 같고.
나 그래서 옛날에 10km 어떻게 뛰었지 막 이러면서 했는데 지금 그냥 이제 막 다시 뛰어.
다시 뛰어?
체력 다시 돌아온 것 같아.
다행이다.
나중에 같이 뛰자.
나도 한번 뛰어보고 싶다. 같이.
러닝 뛰면서 좀 여러 나라 이제 밖에서 외부에서도 뛰어봤으니까 그게 너무 좋더라고.
아 그래?
나는 딱 정해져야 된다 생각해.
And it's like another thing that's so unfortunate, because it's clear that like running is something that is meaningful and helpful and like a good coping mechanism for him. And then it's also being used in this really detrimental way. And it's really devastating. When I see people in treatment with this kind of situation, it is really, really devastating how often you see something that people have loved. They start to use it against themselves in that way, and you have to. It's so difficult to then send them back because it becomes triggering, like this thing that you love, and you have to go through a lot of work to undo the way that like the thing that is supposed to be a great helpful skill for you can hurt you again. Like I've seen this in athletes a number of times, and helping them get back to the sport that they love is like really, really painful for them. Yeah.
우리 삶이 불규칙하니까 내 안에서라도 뭐가 이렇게 정해져 있어야 된다고 생각해서 난 식사는 무조건 그냥 뭐 가끔은 아니고 지금 며칠째 지금 놀고 있긴 하지만 관리할 때는 딱 정해진 그대로 이제 깔끔하게 먹고 그 루틴을 꼭 지키려고 하는데 요즘 닭가슴살은 이제 먹기 너무 싫은 거야.
아 그치 질리지.
막 진짜 너무 짜증나가지고 이제는 닭다리살로 아예 바꿨거든.
야 닭다리살?
닭다리살.
근데 약간 더 찌지 않나?
살?
응.
아니 뭐 닭가슴살에 비해서는 지방도 좀 많고 하긴 한데
아 그러니까.
사실 내가 딱 먹는 거 닭다리살, 햇반, 뭐 소금 이렇게 해서 아니면 이제 방울토마토나 좀 야채 좀 섞어가지고 이런 식으로 먹으면 사실 살 안 찔걸?
나도 그렇게 조금씩 해봐야겠다. 나는 우리가 안무 연습할 때나 형은 좀 이거 뭐라고 하지? 좀 넓다고 해야 되나? 친구들이 좀 많다고 해야 되나?
아 인맥이 많다가.
인맥이 좀
그래?
예를 들면 우리 뭐 콘서트 투어 연습할 때는 아는 안무 형들도 되게 많고 그래서 내가 못 본 댄서 형들이 계실 텐데 형은 갑자기 그 사이에서 막 인사를 하니까
아니 그 당시에 열심히 살았으니까 같이 교류했던 사람들이지 뭐 같이 수업 듣고 아니면 뭐 연습하고 그랬던 사람들이니까.
그게 멋있어. 근데 나도 가끔 그 영상들 찾아봐.
보지 마.
왜? 멋있는데. 나 가끔 와 형이 이런 사람이었구나. 그냥 리마인드하는 게 좋았어. 보면 진짜 멋있는 형이라고 생각하고 많은 사람들 잘 알고 형이 그 사이에서 잘 껴있고 좀 멋있다고 생각합니다. 진짜 멋있다 이 형이.
나도 너 참 대단하다고 생각하는 게 진짜 그냥 바쁜 스케줄 중에 애들 중에서도 스케줄이 하나씩 이제 개인 스케줄을 소화하는 게 진짜 힘들 거 아니야. 우리 나머지도 다 힘든데
알지?
그 와중에도 그거를 소화해내는 게 진짜
아
진짜 리스펙. 진짜 바쁘게 저희가 스케줄을 하는데 개인 스케줄이 많은 용복이는 이제 그거를 더 감당해야 된다는 게 너무 힘들 것 같은데 저희가 봤을 때 근데 그거를 묵묵하게 아무 말도 안 하고 잘 열심히 소화한다는 것 자체가 리스펙하는 거죠. 밑에 이제 내가 둘째니까 다 애들이 동생이잖아.
그렇지.
용복이 너는 되게 순수한 시골 소년의 마음을 가지고 있는 얼굴은 도시남자.
표현이 너무 잘했다. 진짜.
근데
무슨
진짜
느낌인지
심성이 너무 착한 애라서 자꾸 괴롭히고 싶어.
충분히 하고 있잖아.
내가 널 타락시키겠어. 내가 널 타락시키겠어.
I love Lino's corruption kink coming out again. Obviously that's a joke, but I just love that he's always like, I'm gonna corrupt the younglings. And like, you feel like he kind of means it.
그냥 진짜 리노 형은 동네 약간 옆 도시라고 해야 되나?
옆 동네 그냥.
옆 동네에 있는 큰 형이라고 생각해. 근데 오히려 형 덕분에 내가 지금 한국에서 태어나고 약간 자라온 것 같아.
아 그래.
Felix, have you been reading fanfiction? Have you been reading fanfiction, Felix? I feel like Felix has been reading fanfiction. Yeah.
느낌이야. 진짜 뭔가 예전에 우리 어렸을 때 놀았던 느낌이야. 그냥 장난으로 그냥 재미있게 노는 거지. 약간 깊게 대화를 많이 안 하지만 그래도 좀 재밌게 행동을 서로한테 약간 좀 장난도 많이 치고 아까 말한 것처럼 좀 동네에 있는 형이랑 같이 시간도 보내고 같이 놀고 그런 추억들이 좀 많이 쌓여 있긴 해요. 그래서 그만큼 좀 많이 친하긴 하죠.
넌 나랑 같이 해보고.
Yeah, I mean, that's very similar. What Felix just said is very similar to what I said at the beginning of this episode about what I suspected this episode was going to be a lot of, which was essentially like really kind of casual small talk. And like, just as he just said, they don't talk like deeply a lot, but they have a lot of fun together. And I think it's useful and meaningful and valuable to have those kinds of friends. And sometimes you're even really, really close with those kinds of friends. And you can even know that those kinds of friends, you know, if something goes wrong, will be there for you. And if you need to tell them about something that's difficult or deep, they'll be there. But that's not the friend you go to for that, which is, again, very consistent with what we've seen of Lee Know. So that's another thing that's like been very consistent, a mental model of Lee Know, is that like he's not the person you go to have a deep conversation. He's the person you go to when you need to have a good time. Whether it's because you've been having a bad time and you need that bad time to be a little bit better, or because you just want to have a good time, you just want to vibe, you just want to hang out. Like, he's the sort of like distraction buddy, not the let's help you process that buddy. So that's been sort of like a very consistent thing, which again is not in any way, shape, or form like mean that there's a poor quality friendship or a poor quality relationship. You know, people don't tend to get as close and comfortable with that kind of person, but that's fine. Like, that kind of person doesn't necessarily want people to be like as you know, doesn't want as many people opening up to them in that way, right? So it's not in any way, shape, or form a statement about the quality of his friendship, just that just seems consistently not the place he has in people's lives.
먹고 싶은 거 있니?
아 그게 있어. 그냥 식당 가서 먹고 뭐 맛있는
Everybody wants to go
맛있는
eat
거.
something delicious with
양식,
Lee Know.
중식, 한식, 일식 골라봐.
한식.
한식.
어.
너 뭐 좋아하는데?
나 형 그때 옛날에 같이 우리 한식 먹으러 갔을 때 감자탕.
아,
그 새벽에.
그 새벽에.
야 그때도 맛있었는데.
응.
야 사실 나도 막 한식에 관심은.
Of course he's really into Korean food. He lives with Seungmin. He lives with Seungmin! Of course he's really into Korean food. I bet I'm not even joking. I would not be surprised if he had lived with somebody else for years and that somebody else was really into Japanese, if he'd be really into Japanese food. I really wouldn't be surprised. That might not be the case, but like I'd put 50-50 on it.
크게 있는데 근데 아직 모르는 한식이 많은 것 같아. 나도 그런 것도 경험해보고 싶긴 해. 약간 맛있는 식당은 훨씬 더 알 것 같아서. 저 그런 데서 같이 먹으면 좋다고 생각해.
용복이가 항상 저한테 그래요. 옛날에 새벽에 저희끼리 숙소를 탈출해가지고 감자탕을 먹으러 간 적이 있거든요. 24시 감자탕.
I love that Lee Know's stories pre-debut keep being about sneaking out of the dorm. This is what I mean about like you kind of feel like he means the I'm gonna corrupt them thing. Again, not in an actually like you know, getting them into illegal drugs that are gonna get them in trouble type of way. I say that mostly because of the harshness of the illegality of illegal drugs in Southern Korea. But like I know what rules do and don't matter, and I'm going to try to convince you to not follow rules that don't matter type of way. Right? Again, this is fuck the rich Lee Know. You know, for anyone who is, or not fuck the rich, that's not what it says. My brain keeps deciding that's what the shirt said. No, it's eat the rich. Same thing. You know, bro walked on set with that shirt. Decided to wear it. And that's the type of guy he is. And you get the sense that he really wants to teach his dongsangs, like, when it does and doesn't matter, to be rigid, to be stubborn, to follow rules to a T, to, like... You know, I like, Lee Know gives me the type of vibe. This is total guesswork. This is not based on... But Lee Know gives me the type of vibe of like, if someone sat down and explained the tenets of like political anarchy to him, he'd be like, yeah, that sounds right. You know, like, I don't know that he'd say that, you know, but like, he feels like the kind of guy where like you spend just like a couple hours talking about like political anarchy, and you know, maybe that's not how you engage in praxis, or like you know, how you go through your day-to-day politics, but like the difference between moving towards a politic versus like the ideological stance versus how you live day to day, and etc., that he'd be like, I see why people would be anarchists. He gives me that vibe, you know? There's an ad break. Ooh, maybe I should talk about the tenets of anarchy during this ad break.
그때 감자탕을 처음 먹어봤대요. 근데 그걸 먹고 계속 저한테 얘기를 하는 거예요. 형, 감자탕 너무 맛있지 않냐 이러면서. 그게 진짜 재밌었나 봐요, 영복이가. 그래가지고 그 이후로도 휴가 같은 거 받으면 이제 영복이 됐고, 이제 곱창집 가가지고 이것도 맛있어 하면서 이제 먹였던 게 있는데, 복분자. 복분자를 제가 한번 먹여봤는데 너무 좋아하는 거예요. 이게 코리아 레드와인이다 내가 이러면서 이렇게 했는데 너무 좋아하더라고요. 그래가지고 그 이후로도 계속 맨날 곱창, 복분자, 감자탕 저한테 그냥 맨날 얘기를 하는데, 그런 거 좋아하니까 이제 좀 더 맛있는 거 먹여보고 싶어서 좀 여러 군데 데리고 가면 좋을 것 같아요.
근데 또 나는 그것도 원하는 게 있어.
뭐?
그냥 다음에 어디 놀러 가고 싶긴 해. 일본에서 우리 학군에 갔을 때가 또 평화로웠어.
학군에
평화로웠지.
일본. 내일 또 일본 여행을 또 기가 막히게 시켜줄 수 있지.
네, 재밌게 놀 수 있을 것 같아.
Cute.
또 제가 또 오사카는 또 기가 막히게 꿰고 있기 때문에 일단은 그냥 용복이가 먹고 싶은 게 뭔지 들어보고 딱 거기에 맞는 이제 식당들을 좀 데려가는데, 이제 사람들이 많이 가는 곳이 아닌 그냥 정말 로컬 식당들을 한번 데려가 보면 좋을 것 같습니다. 그럼 나한테 앞으로 계속 이런 거는 좀 변하지 않았으면 좋겠다 하는 그런 거 있나?
난 지금 딱 좋은데.
그치? 그냥 이대로만 살아가는 거지 그냥.
그냥 건강 조심만.
건강 조심하면서.
뭐 일이든 일이 없든 그냥 인생을 그냥 재밌게 끝까지 살았으면 좋겠다는 거지. 건강하게.
맞아. 인생은 재밌게 살아야 돼.
적당히.
정보야, 썸네일이나 따자.
좋아.
That sort of feels like maybe that feels like a pointed comment. Especially, hold on. I saw it real quick and I want to see if I can find the screen cap of Lino's face. Look at that smirk. That feels like a pointed comment that I want to know more about. I want to know when Lee Know has had too much fun. I want to know when he's gone too far with having fun, because that's what that feels like, is that there are some less than appropriate stories. Those are the ones I want to know. Oh, God. I can tell. I can taste it. I can listen. Part of my training as a therapist is that I can smell tea. I can smell tea under layers and layers of conversation. And that statement comes with tea. I'm like 90% certain of it, and I want it. And we're not gonna get it. And I'm so sad.
정보야, 썸네일이나 따자.
좋아. 와, 뭐.
자.
Oh, right, because it's Homotron 9000's fan service moment. God. The thumbnail we chose. I love the thumbnail Lino wanted. The thumbnail we chose. Homotron 9000's thumbnail was not gay enough, so Skijigi chose a gayer one. Again, anytime someone says that Skijigi does not like fan service, ludicrous. Ludicrous. Nothing about the editing of the... So, like, I was almost convinced that, like, maybe sometimes Skijigi is, like, iffy about the fan service. And then I watched 2KidsRoom. I'm completely unconvinced. I think Skijigi might be gayer than we are. Like... Skijigi loves this shit. at least the editor.
용복 하이 감자탕을 먹은 지 벌써 몇 년이 지났구나.
I also have recently been informed that apparently these letters are very poorly translated at the end, which makes me deeply upset. I was informed of this because I was sent one of the Hyunlik's letters. I don't remember which one, and I don't remember exactly what it said because I like immediately repressed it so that I'd forget it, so that I'd cry again. I remember it sort of made me crash out. And it was, I was told it was basically a totally different fucking letter. So that's also on my list of things I would like to retranslate. Maybe I will first watch the Handsome Sausage episodes where they do that. I haven't watched the Handsome Sausage episode reactions to like non-music videos. I don't usually watch reactions to non-music videos, but I will for them because I do love them and I really like if they are fixing some of the translation issues.
우리 다음에 또 함 놀러 가야지. 그날을 기다리며 사요나라.
민호짱, 올해도 옆에서 재밌는 인생을 만들어줘서 고맙고 건강도 조심해. 늘 나도 옆에서 챙겨봐 준다. 화이팅, 멋져.
Cute. Well, that was very cute, and I do believe my second shortest 2KidsRoom reaction. Again, doesn't super surprise me. What are my last minute thoughts on this one? My last minute thoughts on this one are... I don't even know if I have any. They're cute. I mean, I've always really liked Felix's and Lee Know's bond, and maybe part of the reason that I don't really have much to say is that for me, nothing has changed in my mental model of their bond, which has always been very like, you know, sort of like kind of actually brotherly in some ways. I think that sometimes people will talk about like the lot of them having brotherly love and like it's not quite right. Like it's not like I would not say that like all deep meaningful friendships are like siblings, you know. That just doesn't quite click for me, but like I also have a very complex relationship with my step sibling, so like maybe I just don't understand how sibling relationships work. I'm willing to put that out there. I mean, I know a lot of people with siblings. I don't know. But they always did legitimately sort of have a like taking care of each other like two siblings would sort of vibe to me. And I think that that was kind of something that was said a few times in the last 2KidsRoom with them. You know, I think they did develop a very specific type of bond in the, you know, like from the beginning. Obviously, so like the understanding that we all have is that basically it was known that Lee Know getting like kicked out of the group during the reality show was an Mnet reality TV show bullshit decision that like was not going to last, right? Like it was basically known that they were going to bring him back. It was basically known by him. It was basically known by Chan. Chan even alludes to it in the reality TV show. Felix, on the other hand, that was not a known quantity by like Chan and the rest of the group, from my understanding. I have not seen the Chan's room where they talk about that, but apparently they do. He does talk about it a little bit like when they found out, and that really does not seem to have been something that they were like aware was going to happen. And I bet that also created, like, that differential created a certain relationship as well. You know, so we don't necessarily know exactly how that relationship developed, but like it definitely created a certain type of bond between them. And I think that really solidified, obviously over time, especially as, you know, we had sort of these three different leaders of the group. The Hyungs all sort of took different leadership lines, but Felix would have been spending a lot of time with Lee Know as his like mentor, because of Dance Sriracha. And so like it's very clear that they are very close, but that closeness does have a lot to do with a sense of mutual protectiveness, but mostly mutual fun, mutual enjoyment, right? They don't really have deep conversations, and I think it does sort of show that they are not like this was not an emotionally intimate conversation, right? This was not an emotionally intimate 2KidsRoom. This was not a crash out 2KidsRoom, right? And I don't think it's because they just didn't want to show certain parts. I think that it seems like that's just sort of what their bond is that that's not as much of what they do. I'm sure that they do some of that, but that is not their role in each other's lives per se. So yeah, got an emotional 2KidsRoom. Yeah, like I don't really think he has. It's been a problem for me as a therapist in watching his episodes. My Lee Know episodes are my shortest for a reason, because I'm like, he sure is a guy. He's sure a dude being a guy. I don't know what people want me to say about him. Okay, I'll be back at 4:30, and we will do Henlix. Yay!